Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Talks for Emerging Leaders. Leadership Talk is a podcast hosted by Leadership Card, a leadership coaching training organization. Leadership Card is the brainchild of four individuals, Kirandeep Sandhu, Ashish Datta, Ram Ramakrishnan, and Devesh Mohan, who share a common vision to support 1 million emerging leaders globally to solve problems for self, others, and the organization. Leadership Card runs leadership programs for individual contributors and corporate clients. Our coaches collectively have over 100 years of experience and come from diverse fields such as academics, finance, real estate, and sales. Every week on Leadership Talks, we invite leaders from varied fields and industries to share their stories and share tips and strategies which you can implement in your personal and professional journey. I'm your friend, Kirandeep Sandhu, a leadership communication coach, and I'm here hosting today's episode with Mr. Ram Ramakrishnan, and we will be discussing about sustainable design for enhanced productivity. Over to you, Ram.
Thank you, Kiran. In today's episode, we are privileged to have Mr. Rakesh Kodoth, Principal Architect and Managing Partner at Dialogue Design Partners, an architecture and interior design consultancy services firm based out of Bangalore. Rakesh has masters in architecture, energy and sustainability from London Metropolitan University and passionate advocate of sustainable practices. He brings 20 plus years of experience in designing sustainable buildings in India and abroad, and has been responsible for design and realization of landmark projects such as Palm Island Jumeirah, Lead Quay Toronto, to name a few. Rakesh is a member of the National Board of Education, Indian Institute, and Professional Concerns Committee of IIA Karnataka Chapter. Welcome, Rakesh Kodoth, for our Leadership Talk show.
Thank you, Ram. A pleasure to meet you, Kiran.
Thank you so much for being here.
Let us start with this very basic question. What is sustainable architecture? Let us start with this question so that listeners have better understanding of this concept.
Yes, it's always good to start with the basics and understand the fundamentals of what we are talking about. But I wish there was a singular or an easy definition to sustainable architecture. So let's look at it separately. What is sustainability and what is architecture all about? Sustainability, in simple words, is what the United Nations adopted in its Brundtland report in 1987, perhaps, which says that it's about fulfilling the needs of today without compromising the full needs of tomorrow. And that's an easy enough definition for it. But it's also, in a sense, a pretty vague, in the sense that do we reduce consumption today and save it for tomorrow, or do we create more infrastructure today that would increase our chances of survival tomorrow? So it could be interpreted one way or the other. It's a pretty vague definition, but it's still a good working definition of sustainability. Let's look at what architecture is all about, and there are a lot of misconceptions about it. Architecture is inherently a human activity. It's so basic to us that we're almost born with the need to shape our environment and control it. We not only build for shelter like other animals would do, but we also build for many other reasons apart from shelter itself. So we do build work environments and living environments, but we also build for other reasons, like we build for power, we build for memory, we build for love, we build for inclusion, we build for exclusion. Any reason that there is almost no aspect of human thought, emotion, or activity that does not involve a building or controlling the environment around us. So that is what architecture is all about. And sometimes we build just for the pleasure of building. For example, if you put a few kids in a sand pit, there's a good chance they will build a sand castle or dig a tunnel through it. It's of no use to them, but just they enjoy the activity of building and shaping the environment around them. So we build even for almost no reason. How do you put these two together? And ironically, human beings are also the most adaptive species on the planet. We live anywhere between Alaska and Europe. and the equator. So, to me, sustainability is about marrying these three aspects. You take our need to control the environment and take our adaptability, put them together in an environmentally sensitive manner, to shape our environment and whatever desires and aspirations that we have. This can be done at policy levels, at industrial levels, large organization levels, or down to the individual or the community levels. The good thing about sustainability is there is no hierarchy to it. Anything that you do works.
Brilliant. I mean, very well said. I mean, need to control adaptability and the fact that we are adaptable species, what you just said, Rakesh. And the need keeps changing, but are we able to keep in mind how we can, keep our planet, keep the environment, all these factors also as a priority, and it's just not what would it's like we would say is it a buzzword, or is it a necessity, or is it a priority? I think our need constantly changes and we are constantly adapting, but what are the priorities that we can do at the individual level with to give back to our planet, which is giving us everything that we have? So very well put, very well put. Ram?
Yeah, that's a great thought. One of the things, it's also true. One of the things, when I was managing sustainability, we always used to say, anything you just take it, in sustainability, you are assured of results. You do to an extent of effort, you put in the extent of effort, you do something, results are assured. In other areas, you may not find that. Here it is, that is assured results are definitely there to the extent of thing you do it. As you already said, it's a buzzword. Everybody uses this buzzword. Given that, my next question to Rakesh is, what do leaders or decision makers need to invest in? Why leaders or decision makers need to invest in sustainable designs?
Yes, there is an unfortunate truth to that statement that you made, that it's become a buzzword. It's one of those words that you can throw into any conversation and feel like you've said something substantial. It's also at the same time a very empowering word, in the sense that the moment you have said it, you don't feel the need to do anything about it, because you already feel like you've done something for the planet just by saying sustainability.
Right.
But there are a few myths associated with it. That one of them is that it's very expensive, but our own survival shouldn't be an expensive enterprise. And also, it's about managing aspirations and priorities. The moment we add an aspirational value to something, it stops becoming expensive, and we stop comparing it to anything else. For example, if you were buying a car, you would look for it to be fuel efficient, and if you would be willing to pay a price for that additional efficiency. You wouldn't buy a car that is not fuel efficient. Similarly, with buildings, why would you build something that consumes more energy when energy itself is very expensive? Also, one looks at it in a sort of a binary, that either there is a lifestyle cost to it, because there is one school of thought that says that sustainability is all about people living in low tech environments, in mud houses, growing their own vegetables and turning vegan. That's one extreme. And the other is to think that we have to invest in high tech buildings and very expensive equipment to make things sustainable. Neither of which is entirely wrong, but neither of which is entirely balanced either. They are two extremes. So sustainability has to balance economical viability, social equity, and the environmental aspects. Without that balance, it is not possible to have something that's truly sustainable, and it won't last long. So that's the whole point of it, I think. And again, cost compared to what?
So I'm going to take this forward, Rakesh, by asking you that obviously your design has been influenced by your travels across the globe, and you're into sustainability and how we want to encourage sustainability in architecture. The question that I have right now is that when you are proposing solutions, to industry leaders so that they can bring in sustainable designs, what could be some of those elements that you are able to share with them which would encourage them? I mean, other than the fact that it is a necessity, but what would be some of those small tweaks that people can make in their own industries to make their designs more sustainable?
Yes, one of the things I've been profoundly influenced by my own travels and working in different environments. Although initially I set out on this journey purely driven by the aspirations and the curiosity to see the world and understand how we fit in, but then slowly that turned into something more meaningful, and that's pretty much, I think, what leadership is all about: finding meaning in something and inspiring people to follow it. So some of the things is and what you learn from that is that you cannot be an absolutist about something. It's a solution that works in one place, what is right and wrong in one place, doesn't work in another place. So it's easy to come back and say that, look, these are the things that Western countries are doing, or more economically developed countries are doing, and therefore we should then implement it in India as well, or in our context, and it will work. No, it doesn't work. We have to understand that everything has to be tailored to its own situation and context, whether it's geographic context, political context, social context, whatever it is. So, take for example, to give you an example, take something as simple as a work environment. There was a need for us to not only shelter ourselves in a work environment initially during the Industrial Revolution, when we turned from an agricultural economy into an industrial economy, but with the advent of computers, we also felt the need not only to shelter ourselves, but also sort of insulate ourselves, because computers required an insulated environment to work in. There comes the need for air-conditioned spaces, dust-free spaces, noise-free spaces, and things like that. Of course, because also to add pollution and things like that. But today, people work on laptops. Computers also have evolved to be able to sustain in a little more hostile weather conditions. And combine that with our own need, or biophilia, for example, our own need to merge or adapt with nature. Today, you can sit in a balcony and work on a computer and be as efficient as working in an air conditioned large office. So, building in an environment like Bangalore, building naturally ventilated buildings are actually cheaper than building air conditioned offices, only because we added an aspirational value to air conditioned offices because we associate it with some sort of a social status or hierarchy. But that value is gone again. So, what you can do with sustainability and what you learn from working in different contexts is you're quickly able to change perspectives. The value that you associated with something in a certain situation doesn't exist in the other situation.
So it comes back to what we're talking about, that sustainability increases the productivity and the context keeps changing, and you have to keep adapting as we are the adaptable species, and from there create these sustainable designs which are constantly. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And if it increases productivity, it increases profitability. So if you're looking at it purely from an economic perspective,
And that is the best
profitable.
thing that you can tell the leaders that this is what is going to happen, and hence we need to be investing in this sustainable designs, which even though it may be costly in the beginning, because that could be a thing that always concerns people, that are we increasing, but is it a long-term thing that we are investing in, and how that is going to create that momentum? Yeah.
Yeah, I just would like to add a point as we are conversing. One of the, when organization adopts the sustainability, what it happens is it's not only the organization is doing, they are influencing their employees who are working in the organization. This is what I learned when I was working in Wipro when we were doing that. One of the concepts they were telling was, by way of doing it, there are about 150,000 plus employees who are there. They'll take, actually they have taken those practices and they looked at, there are so many people implemented their water conservation, energy conservation measures at their home, which is a multiplier effect. It gives a multiplier effect definitely as the organization leadership takes a decision and starts working on that. That is the clear indication. This one comes in.
I'm going to ask this question, Rakesh, that Now we've said that, okay, your journey started from India, then you worked across the globe, and now today you're back in India and creating basically and become an advocate of sustainable architecture in India. What do you think that what was your decision for coming back to India? Because everybody's talking about going out and working. You decided to come back. And how are you creating that impact in your own society in advocating sustainable architecture? Would you be able to share a little bit about that? Because that takes us on the journey that takes us on that loop of your journey.
It's an interesting question. I'm not entirely sure I have a convincing answer to that.
Okay.
And I myself do not know at what point in my career I thought about coming back, or what caused me to do that. But I can tell you that there are days when I think about what things could have been if I had stayed on and continued that journey. But I do see value in what we are doing over here, in the sense that architecture is something, or as architects as a profession, and I'm not talking about architecture as an abstract entity, but as practicing, as somebody who practices the profession, one is able to make a better social connect and a social influence in a developing country like India. The penetration or the influence of an architect is much deeper and larger in a developing society. Now, if you take for example North America, architects are usually employed by very large organizations, builders, and your influence is limited to the cream of the society, or 1% of the economically affluent society. If somebody has to custom build a house, it costs a fortune. So a layman only buys a house from a catalog of pictures, and lives in an environment that's shaped by others for them. In a developing country, everybody has aspirations, whether it's a small 1,500 square feet plot. They still want to shape that environment to their own liking and desires and aspirations. So an architect is brought in to design that space as well. That aspect of being able to influence a society at a much deeper and broader level is there. Also, when it comes to city infrastructure, we do some urban intervention projects as well. There is a need to improve overall infrastructure at a community and at a city governance level. And that is something that we are able to influence. So there is a lot of satisfaction in that, yes. And that is one of the reasons that
So
keeps me
basically,
here.
back.
I don't know what brought me here, but it definitely keeps me here.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is that it has brought, I mean, the impact that you create in the developing countries is more visible than what probably you would be able to see if you were working in another country, like how you worked in Canada or Europe and other places in America. So I think that is a very meaningful thing that you've just shared, because how can we give back to our own community and actually uplifted and be part of that visible changes, which otherwise you would just blend in if you were in another society where it wouldn't be so visible. So that actually, Ram can talk into the question about the challenges that probably you have faced in your journey. Ram, would you like to talk about that?
Yes, yes. That is always when one of the thing is when we work with the global teams, because I have been working with multinational organization, it is a big challenge. They come from the different views and different thoughts. Part of it, that is what they will come in because of the cultural and various other things also. What are some of the challenges you faced in your journey, and how did you overcome to become that kind of a leader you are today?
Interesting. Yes, it is. It is a challenging journey when you decide to take that step towards working in different environments. Uh, the first challenge is that you're working in completely not just a physical environment, a social environment, and a political environment. Whether it's a monarchy like in the Middle East, whether it's a democratic society, like in London, whether it's a society that's as open as Toronto. And each of these countries have different influences on themselves, the people that work there and live there, and also different influences on the rest of the world. The influence that UK has on the rest of the world is very different from what Canada has on the rest of the world, or Dubai has on the rest of the world. So you learn to understand those perspectives, and that's an initial challenge as well. Specifically to architecture, I've been fortunate enough to work on very large projects, some of the historical landmarks, like for example the Palm Jumeirah, or the Maple Leaf Quay in Toronto, which was a redevelopment project. Um, and what happens is some of these projects do not have precedence. For example, the scale at which the Palm Island was done and the reasons for which it was done had no precedent. So we had to figure things out as we go, and that is one of the initial challenges, is to figure out what to do and how things can be done in a meaningful manner. What one learns from that is, at the end of the day, the challenge is not the logistics of it, but if you're able to overcome the challenge of working with people who come from different viewpoints and environments, and that's the advantage of living in societies where largely populations are immigrants or come from completely different backgrounds, is that you see different perspectives. And once you've learned to work with people, people make things happen. So the challenge becomes interesting. Um, so the other thing with working with such environments is also that one learns to quickly adapt, and one learns to quickly filter. You filter the fluff and get to the point very quickly, because you've seen a lot more points of view than you normally would have. So then you cut to the chase pretty quickly, so to speak.
I have a
Agree.
follow up. Yeah, I do have this question which is coming from what you just said. Rakesh, like as an architect, you have your certain design ideas, which we talk about, and you're obviously into the sustainability. But again, working in those different environments, for example, if you worked in the Middle East, there's certain influences that you bring in from that particular design, architectural design. Maybe for our listeners, have you been able to bring certain design elements which you have probably replicated in India as an example to show that what influenced you and how you have used that as a design in one of your designs in India, which people could probably recognize?
Um, Difficult to pinpoint at a visual reference that people can recognize, and this is one of the things that I have consciously tried not to do, is to
Okay.
replicate something.
Okay.
And I think it's what you learn from these environments is the attitude. Now, if what I learned from Dubai is a can-do attitude.
Oh.
Dubai builds the biggest, largest projects in the world, and there is
Mhm.
nothing they consider as impossible.
Wow.
And that's a brilliant takeaway from working from Dubai, is that if there is a challenge, however big in front of you, the first thing is tune into that mindset of, you know what, no challenge is big enough. We can get this done. If you have to bring people from anywhere in the world, they will do it. If they have to bring material or resources from anywhere in the world, they'll do it, but they'll get things done. And that's the takeaway from a place like Dubai.
But I think in India we have that can-do attitude also. Ho jayega. Everything can be done. I mean, I
Yes,
think
but that's and there's a difference in that, is that
that,
Indians, perhaps, and I shouldn't generalize this. It's
yeah.
unfair to generalize it, but I think the primary difference is that uh, uh, we don't think in terms of scalability. We
Mm.
do the concept of a frugal invention, or jugaad as we like to say, right? I'm not particularly fond of that word. Is that we take a lot of pride in solving a problem immediately, but that's also very ad hoc and short-sighted.
Oh.
And if you look at working in a place like London, or studying in a place like London, they have a global vision to everything. Like it or not, they still think that they control the world. But that's a vision that's gone into their DNA. Everything they do, they think in terms of systems that can be adapted to anywhere in the world. So scalability is something that you learn from working in environments like London.
I really like what you just added. Over to you, Ram.
Yes, that's great, Donna. The other thing is, I thought I resonate with you because one of the things even you work with the people directly, but I work with those leaders from different countries. By the time one of the things we always used to educate our what is that we do and what is that they do. It's a lot of learning, cross learning definitely happens, and you improve upon your thinking process. Definitely, that is there. So now we talked so much about it, and the sustainability is something which is going to be the either a buzzword or it is going to be one of the thing everyone needs to follow, and if they wanted to do something towards that. And given that, what is some of the relating to the sustainability? If you have to leave a message to our emerging leaders, what is that you would like to leave with or thought would like to ask them to work on?
If there is one message I'd like to leave for leaders, whether it is sustainability or anything else, is that leadership is not really about uh, being given a chance to sit in a position of authority to do anything. Leadership is about showing initiative, whether you're an intern in an office, an individual, or somebody participating in a community, or at organization or governance levels. You could be sitting in any position and still show leadership. So it's not about yielding authority. It's about showing initiative. It's also about resilience. You have to understand how to tackle problems of whether it is logistics, time, human resources. They all need to be tackled differently, and learning to quickly adapt, look at different points of view, and understanding that sustainability is not just one aspect. It is about economics, it's about social equity, and it's about learning to nurture and live with nature and not look at it as an adversary. So apply these principles in even the smallest of decisions that you make to the largest of decisions that you make, as you naturally would. Do not try too hard. It's not an add-on feature to everything that you do, but it is the natural way of doing things. Once you understand that, leadership and sustainability will come naturally to you. You wouldn't have to try too hard.
I'm going to just ask one follow-up question, which is going to be how can leaders encourage a culture of sustainability in their organizations?
The best way to encourage anything is to lead by example.
Brilliantly said. Thank you so much, Rakesh. This was a very interesting conversation for us, myself, understanding more about sustainability and architecture. Your journey, whether it was as a globetrotter or coming back and creating impact in your own society. I think our viewers and listeners have many takeaways that it is not just a buzzword. You are responsible for creating and leaving your footprint on this planet. So do your part. It is necessary. And that goes for whether you're an emerging leader or a leader. And with that, I want to say thank you to you, Rakesh, for joining me and Ram on this show. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us this week. And Leadership Talks for Emerging Leaders will be back next week. For more, log in to our website, www.leadership.com, for our leadership programs. Do follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and we bring you next week another leader to share their vision, their ideas, so that you have steps and actions that you can make a difference in your own leadership journey. With that, this is Kiran, Rakesh, and Ram signing off. Thank you so much.
Thank